Good morning, children. In our previous class, we have done the first part of the poem, Another Woman. So today, let us go ahead with the second part of the poem, Another Woman. A quick reading of part 2. She crouched as usual on the floor beside the stove. When the man came home, she did not look into his face nor raise her head, but bent her back a little more. Nothing gave her the right to speak. She watched the flame hiss up and beat against the cheap old pot, a wing of brightness against its blackened cheek. This was the house she had been sent to, the man she had been bound to, the future she had been born into. So, when the kerosene was thrown, just a moment of surprise, a brilliant spark. It was the only choice that she had ever known. Another torch blazing in the dark, another woman. We shield our faces from the heat. So till now, what we had done was, we know that the woman, she goes to the kitchen, cuts the vegetables, puts them in a pot and places the pot on the stove. She quietly listens to her mother-in-law's words. Now let us see what happens next. Let's go line-wise. She crouched as usual on the floor beside the stove. Crouched means to sit with the legs and the knees, hands, close, the knees bent and the body over it. So, she crouches on the floor. As usual again means a regular act of hers. So, usually while cooking, it's quite common that she crouches down on the floor beside the stove. When the man came home, she did not look into his face nor raise her head, but bent her back a little more. Now, when the man came, who does the man refer to here? Yes, right, it is a husband. It refers to her husband. So when the husband comes home, she doesn't even look at him. She doesn't have the usual liberty of a normal wife to talk to her husband about the day's proceedings, her joys and sorrows. She does not even look at him because she knows that it was of no use. See, children, you look at someone when we expect some sort of support from them. She knows that he would not support her or comfort her or even stand by her side. Instead, he would add fuel to the fire. He would take the side of his mother and he would also scold her. So she feels there was no point in looking at him, and therefore she bends her head a little more. So what does this show? All this was just because of the unpaid dowry. So the unpaid dowry, nothing gave her the right to speak. So the unpaid dowry stole every single liberty of hers, like liberty to speak something or the liberty to buy anything of her choice. So she just keeps quiet. She doesn't speak to him. Next, let us proceed. She watched the flame hiss up and beat against the cheap old pot, a wing of brightness against its blackened cheek. What does hiss up mean? Yes, rise up. And what does beat mean over here? Strike or touch, strike violently or touch. Cheek refers to the bottom of the pot. So now let's see what do we mean by these lines. So she watched the flame or the flame or the fire rise up. Yes, here again, hiss up. It is rise up. This is a literary device. And what is this? That is onomatopoeia, which means words that resemble or suggest or imitate the sounds that they describe. So now, when the fire rises up and it strikes, beat means strikes the bottom of the pot. Here once again we have personification. The fire rises up and touches the bottom of the cheap old pot. A wing of brightness against its blackened cheek. So here, as the fire rises up, it gives a kind of brightness to the pot. And yet, it is the same fire which in the long run blackens the cheek, rather the bottom of the pot. Now, let us read between the lines. She relates this to her life. She contemplates this to her life, like marriage as the fire and her life being the pot. So the meaning, rather the inner meaning is marriage gives her the status of a respectable woman in the society. But again, it is the same marriage which is the reason for all the miseries and hardships that she undergoes or faces. Clear, children? So, let us proceed to the next stanza. This was the house she had been sent to, the man she had been bound to, the future she had been born into. So, this is the house where she had been sent to by her parents as a daughter-in-law. This is the man to whom she has been wedded. Bound to means wedded. And this is the world about which she has been getting the lessons of suffering. Right from her childhood, she was told how to behave at her in-laws' house. So this is the same house where she steps in as a daughter-in-law but is ill-treated, and she faces so many tortures and miseries. Hope you followed. Let us proceed. So, when the kerosene was thrown, just a moment of surprise, a brilliant spark. It was the only choice that she had ever known. So as she watches the fire and was in deep thoughts, suddenly the kerosene was thrown at her, and within no time she was in flames. Rather, she was caught in flames. But mind you, children, she didn't cry for help or didn't even try to put off the fire. This shows, the helplessness of the woman. She just thinks that the only way to put an end to her misery was to get burnt. That was the only choice left with her. So she just gives in, keeps quiet, and catches the fire and bears it. Let us proceed. Another torch blazing in the dark, another woman. We shield our faces from the heat. Another torch, which means one more girl or woman, catches a blaze in the dark. Another woman, which means one more woman who turns out to be a victim of dowry death. We shield our faces from the heat. Yesterday, if you remember, I told you the last line of the first stanza states she shields her face from the heat. That means she keeps quiet and bears the tortures given to her. Isn't it? And now let us focus upon the last line. We shield our faces from the heat. So, who does the word we refer to? Yes, it is we, the people of the society. So, we turn our faces from the harsh realities of our society. We talk about many things, but never act. The society knows that women are getting killed and oppressed in the name of birth, dowry, etc. But there is no one to act against it. No one to raise a voice. So children, the last line shows the failure of her family, her in-laws, her husband and the society. Let's see how. Family not giving the required dowry, in-laws ill-treat her, husband doesn't give her the respect that a wife deserves, and society, even after knowing everything, they just keep quiet. They do not raise a voice. So that is what the poem Another Woman is. And if you remember, yes, in my previous video, I said the title Another Woman is very apt to the poem, and we are going to discuss how apt it is. The title Another Woman is very effective. It tells about a very common and prominent practice in the society. Here, another woman. The woman is a representative of the whole women in the society who are experiencing the same condition. So, the title tells that she is yet one more woman, one more victim of dowry death. Understood, children? I hope it is very clear to you all. Just for a recap, can I ask you a few questions? What are the different literary devices used in the poem? What do you mean by we shield our faces from the heat? How does the woman relate the flame of the stove to her life? What does a wing of brightness against his blackened cheek mean? Thank you, children.